Run the fastest lion or they're going to be eaten. And every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up and they know that they must outrun the slowest antelope or they're going to starve. So it doesn't matter whether you're a lion or whether you're an antelope, you have to wake up running. And I think that applies to us as entrepreneurs. We have to run to survive. Today I want to talk to you about surviving, and then I want to talk to you about success, because there's a difference in the two. We began our Subway business in 1995. Always had a dream of owning a business. When I was a small child, I had a cash register, and I had products that I sold to the neighborhood kids. I loved doing that, and I wanted to have my own business. And in 1995, I went to a fairly new restaurant in this area. It was a little bit before 95. Subway. And I loved the fact that they prepared the food in front of you. And I tasted the food and I thought it was great. I loved the bread. And I also noticed that they had healthy options, which other QSRs, quick service restaurants, didn't have at that time. And I felt like that would be a good business for me to be in. And I approached my mom, and we decided to become 50-50 partners in the Subway business. And during the time, we have a handout here that has the timeline on it of some of our development, some of our growth. And during that time, from 1995 to the present, we've gone all the way up to 9 stores. We've dropped back down to 8 stores. We've opened new stores. We have relocated stores. In fact, if you'll notice on there, we've relocated 1 store twice. So it sounds like we made a mistake there. But during this time, we survived. The first years, especially until 2010, we were just surviving. And I learned some lessons about surviving as an entrepreneur. And that first lesson is that the journey is longer than you think it's going to be. I see some people nodding their heads. In 1995, when we were planning opening the restaurant, I wrote down a goal, 5 stores in 5 years. And I taped that on the wall of the office. And in 5 years, we didn't have 5 stores. We still had 1 store. In 2001, we opened our 2nd store. Finally, in 2006, 11 years after we started, we reached my goal. We actually doubled our size. We went from 4 stores to 8 stores at one time. So the journey's going to take longer than you think, but you got to keep running. Second thing I learned is the work is harder than you think. I have some amens. My mom and I did not take a paycheck for the first 6 years. And Tim and I and my dad did our construction. When I mean construction, I mean framing, electrical, plumbing, sheetrock, insulation, taping and bedding sheetrock, hanging wallpaper. We did all of that. We were in small towns that didn't have codes that we had to live up to. So we could do some of those. I think we followed code, but we did the work ourselves. It was very hard. After we opened the stores, we worked 60 plus hours a week, 7 days a week for years. So it's harder than you think it's going to be, but we kept running. The third thing I learned is the price is higher. As I said, we didn't take a paycheck for the first 6 years. The return is lower many times than what you expected. When we bought the 11 stores up here, not the 11 stores, in 2011, in 2006, when we bought those stores, we only had 11 employees in those 4 stores. Only 11 employees remained from the other owner. And oh my gosh, you can't operate 4 stores with 11 employees. So Tim and I would each open a store, and we had to stay and close the store too. We could take a small break in the afternoon, 3 to 4 hours break in the afternoon. And we couldn't afford to rent a motel room. So we drove home each night. We live in Cross Plains. And we found that you could go to a movie matinee and you could sleep through the movie. It was cool, it was dark, and you could sleep and rest. So we tried to pick the most boring movie we could find in order to rest in the afternoon. So price was higher than we anticipated it being. The last thing that I learned is that you make mistakes. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the mistakes we made because we made too many to count, and we don't have time today to go into that. I'm going to tell you 3, as I told Mike earlier, $100,000 mistakes. We had a choice of opening our first store in Cross Plains or Cisco. We chose Cross Plains. We should have chosen Cisco. It's a bigger town, it's on the interstate. And to compound the mistake, we bought the building in Cross Plains, so we were stuck there. So we had 2 mistakes on top of each other. As I said, we didn't make any money, couldn't pay ourselves until we opened the store in Cisco. And then we started being able to pay ourselves. We relocated some stores. We had a store, when we bought the stores up here, it was on South 11 on Treadway. It was inside a convenience store. It wasn't a great location. It was very cheap rent, but it wasn't a very good location. So we decided to move it. And we moved it to another convenience store on the corner of South First and Sales. We didn't do our research. That convenience store operator charged 10 cents a gallon more than other convenience stores. So we didn't draw people in, and it was almost impossible to get to that location legally. Now, you could cut across lanes and you could make illegal left turns and get to it that way. But it was not a good location. It's not a good move for us. We had more sales, but not enough to pay for the relocation. And if you notice on your timeline, it says 2004. It's a typo. It should say 2007. We relocated that store the first time in 2007. We relocated it again, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, we relocated that store again. And it's doing better. It's still on the corner of South First and Sales. It's just across the street. So we made a lot of mistakes. And the third mistake we made that was huge was we had an employee that had a wreck. And unfortunately, a person in the other car died. And in the ensuing lawsuit that happened because of that, we didn't have enough insurance to settle with that person. We had to dig deep in our pockets and give them almost every dime we had. So those 3 mistakes cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you have to keep running. So when it takes longer, and it's harder, and it costs more, and you don't get as much as you think you do, and you make mistakes, you have to learn from it, and you have to keep running. Now that's what we did to survive. So whether you're a lion, an antelope, or an entrepreneur, if you want to survive, you've got to keep running. But if you want success, you've got to do more. Now, I wasn't a great leader, and when I say I, many times I mean we, but this time I mean I. If I say I, the rest of the time I'm talking about Tim and I. But right now I'm talking about me. I was not a great leader. I had thoughts of like, I put the money up for this business. I get to do it the way I want to do it. It's my way, it's the highway. I also thought things like, I give you a paycheck. Why should I have to thank you every day? Why should I have to do something nice for you? You get a paycheck. I thought that way. I also expected people to work as hard as I did, and as hard as Tim did, as hard as my mom did. And they didn't. I wonder why. They aren't invested in the same way, and I wasn't thinking of our employees in the way that I needed to think of them. Now, I was pretty great at customer service. I think I still am. I think that's one of my strengths. And we went to a convention, Subway convention in San Antonio in 2003. And I went to a customer service breakout session, and I listened to a woman that changed my viewpoint on business, and she changed my viewpoint on life. She said, if you want better customer service in your restaurant, and I perked up to listen, she said, you need to give better service to your employees. Your employees treat your customers the way you treat them. And I realized at that point that I wasn't treating my employees the way I treated my customers, and that I needed to make a change. So I did what I knew to do. I read a book. I'm going to tell you I read a lot of books. Tim will tell you we have bookcases of books. I'm going to tell you about 3 or 4 books that impacted me. One of the first books I read about business was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Who's read that book? Okay. If you haven't, you really should. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business for yourself, it's a great book to read, and he has a redo of it called The E-Myth Revisited. That's very good also. And in that book, he says he wants you to develop systems for your business. And we did that. We have some great systems for running our stores. And we run all our stores pretty much the same way. But he also wants you to work on your business and not in your business. In other words, I shouldn't be making sandwiches all the time. I should be determining how to grow my business, make my business better. Well, we implemented the systems, but somehow, no matter how hard we worked, no matter how hard we ran, we were still working in the business. We were still running stores. Second book I read was Good to Great by Jim Collins. Tons of great business principles in that book. You should read that one too. It's a hard read. It's really better to listen to it. If you get Audible books, it's a good book to listen to. Lots of good points for businesses. And I took some of those points to heart, but I'm still working in my business. And then I read a book called Entree Leadership by a gentleman named Dave Ramsey. Some of you may have heard Dave Ramsey on the radio. He talks about getting out of debt, but he also talks about leadership. In this book, he took an entrepreneur and a leader, and he puts them together as an entree leader. Someone who's in business for themselves, but is also a leader. And that attracted me. Now, when you read the book, one of the first things he says that really impacted me, he said, go look in the mirror. And you say these words, you're the problem. And the good news, he says, is you're also the solution. And at that point, I began looking at me and what was I doing that was causing the problems. And we went to a seminar in San Angelo that Dave Ramsey put on, and there was a speaker there named John Maxwell. And I really liked his simple explanation of leadership and ways of implementing leadership, and I began reading his books. And in 2011, John Maxwell began certifying and training people to teach his programs. And I had a new dream. My new dream was to start a speaking, training, and coaching business, helping other business owners to avoid the mistakes that I'd made. Well, it took until 2016 for me to begin that certification process, and I actually finished last August of 2017. And even though I've read his books and we've implemented some things, there was a lot more to implement that I learned in the training. And in the past year, we've seen huge improvements in our management team, in the way they react and the way they take care of their stores. So we've seen a big improvement. I don't know if you're familiar with John Maxwell. He's written over 100 books, and he sold 26 million copies. He's the advisor not only to heads of companies, but heads of countries. Saudi Arabia is working with John Maxwell right now to transform their country and bring them into the 21st century. Now, a tool that John Maxwell uses quite often is the 5 levels of leadership. And the 5 levels of leadership gives you a common language to talk about leadership. If you have employees, I know some of you don't, but we have to lead ourselves. Remember that. It gives you a common language of leadership, and it's like a GPS for leadership. It's going to tell you where you are. It's going to tell you what your ultimate goal is, where you want to go. And it's going to give you the way to get there, the route. So think of this as GPS for leadership. Now, in order to start on this handout that you have, looks like this, I want to talk about just a couple of laws from one of Maxwell's books called The 21 Laws of Leadership. This is one of the best-selling leadership books of all time. And I want to talk to you about 2 laws that he mentions in there. The law of the lid. The law of the lid says that your leadership ability determines your success. How well I lead determines how well I succeed. Let's say I'm an average leader on a scale of 1 to 10. about 10 years ago, let's say I'm a 5 right here. My leadership ability is a lid on my company. My company can never be more than a 4 because I am holding them at that level because my leadership ability isn't any better than that. Now the good news is that you can raise that lid and raise the performance of your company. So think about that law of the lid as we're talking about this. And the other law is the law of process. Now I realized in 2003 I needed to be a better leader. It didn't happen for a long time and I'm still working on it. I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it. But the law of process says that leadership develops daily. You do something every day to work on your leadership, and by doing that, you will become a better leader. So we have to keep working on it. So let's go to your handout. On level 1 at the bottom, there's some blanks to fill in for you. On level 1, it's called the position level, and your key word is rights. You have the right to lead because you have a title. That's all you have, is you have a title. Doesn't make you a good leader. Now, I know you've seen those Gallup surveys that talk about 70% of employees are not engaged. Have any of you seen those or experienced that 70% of your employees are not engaged? That's because 80% of leaders never leave level 1. Most bosses stay at level 1. They stay at that position level. There's no engagement or energy. Your people, they just show up for the paycheck. If you find yourself saying, I can't find good people, sure is lonely at the top, or nobody cares, you may be a level 1 leader. You may be working just from your position. Now, the good news is you don't have to stay there. You can move to level 2. Level 2 is the permission level. This is where people start developing relationships, and people follow you because they like you. You've gotten to know them, they've gotten to know you. You have a relationship with that person, and your energy level increases. Now, 3 things that level 2 leaders do very well. They listen to their employees. They ask them about their lives. They ask them about what's going on with them. They ask their opinion about things going on at work, and they listen to that. The second thing they do is they observe. They observe what motivates my employees, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. The third thing they do is they serve. And they're able to serve their employees because they know what they need, because they listen and they observe. So those are 3 things that level 2 leaders do very well. Now you can move on to level 3, which is the production level, and the key word on this level is results. People follow you because of what you've done. They see that you've produced results. These people are successful. I want to get on the boat with them. Now, level 1 leaders follow you because they have to. You write the paycheck. Level 2 followers, they follow you because they like you. And level 3, they follow you because they want to be with a winner. There's 3 things that level 3 leaders do very well. They set a really good example. They get in, they work. They show their people how it's done. The second thing, by getting in with their people and showing them how it's done and producing something, they create some energy, and that creates momentum. Once you get momentum, things get better. And they also attract better people. That's that leadership lid in action. If you are an average leader of 5 on that scale of 1 to 10, you're only going to attract 3s and 4s as people. If you raise your leadership lid to a 7 or an 8, you can attract 6s and 7s to your organization, and your organization becomes more profitable. You provide better service to your customers. So there's things that work very well on level 3. Now you have to remember that 2 and 3 build on each other, and you have to use both of them. I skipped level 2. I skipped relationships totally. I'm all about results and getting things done. And I skipped those relationships. And as a result of that, I was a level 3 leader, but I only did that one thing well. I set a good example. And you can produce a lot by you doing all the work, but you get other people to do the work. Everything works great while I'm there. When I walk away, things fall apart. That's the difference between level 2 and level 3. You have to have them both to move on to level 4. Level 4 is people development and reproduction. People follow you because of what you've done for them. You've trained and equipped them very well. I want to talk to you a little bit about equipping people. And this is going to sound very simple when I start out, but this is probably the most important thing I can say to you today if you have to train other people to do something. It's probably the most important thing. The first thing you need to do in this training process is you do it. I'm going to say, I do it. I have to master the subject. I have to be able to make a sandwich before I can train somebody else to make a sandwich. So I do it, first step. Second step, I do it, and you're with me. We make a sandwich together. I show you how to make it. Third step is you do it, and I'm with you. I'm training and coaching you how to do it better. And the fourth step is you do it. You've mastered it, you're doing fine, you're doing great. This is where most training stops. But the magic happens in step 5. And this magic has started happening in our company in the last year. You do it, and someone is with you. We're always training our managers and our people to always be training somebody else to do everything that they do. So the real magic is you do it, and someone's with you. You can multiply your results by doing that. Now, level 5, it's the pinnacle of the respect level. Not many of us are going to get there with very many people. It's something to aspire toward. Some level 5 leaders I can think of would be Nelson Mandela, Jack Welch from GE, Billy Graham. He recently passed away, and we saw his funeral. Ex-presidents came to his funeral. Leaders from other countries came to his funeral. He had not been preaching for years, but he was such a great leader that they respected him and they still followed him. Now, it's an aspirational level, and hopefully I can get to that level with some people. I doubt very seriously I'll get to that level with everyone like those people did. Now, in summary, these 5 levels give you 3 things. They give you that language, they tell you where you are, and they tell you how to move to a different level. So it's very important to move up that ladder and increase your leadership. Now, I like for you to take action, because the only way we learn is if you take action. So I want you to turn your paper over and write down a couple of names of people that you lead, and maybe you don't lead somebody, or maybe you influence someone. Maybe you influence someone at church or at a service club. And I'd like you to write those names down. Do that right now. And today or tomorrow, I want you to look at those names and look at those notes and figure out what level you're on with that person, and think of a couple of steps to take to get to that next level. Now, the teaching I did today is just one chapter in this book, Developing the Leader Within You. Have you found it beneficial? Do you think you can use something like this? Our time together has been just a few moments. The next thing you need to do is you need to think about implementing this and growing yourself. And I want you to remember that my leadership leaps, when I took a leap, was when I was working with someone else, just like y'all do here. So at this time, I want to turn it back over to Mike, and I would like to, where's the basket? I'd like for you to draw a name out of here. Well, 2 names. Out of here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Metro High Rail. Would you rather have attitude or